Hi, my name's Ian and I'd like to tell you about this book. It's called Godric, a novel by Frederick Buechner. It's first published in 1980, still available on Amazon if you're interested. Now, Buechner's an American writer, novelist, poet and theologian. He's an ordained Presbyterian minister in the United States and the author of more than 30 published books. His work encompasses all sorts of different genres, including fiction, autobiography, essays and sermons. His career spanned more than 6 decades and he's won a number of awards, including being shortlisted for the Pulitzer Prize, actually for this novel. I'd already read some of his non-fiction work, which I enjoyed very much, so sought out some of his fiction, and this was the first one I came across. It's the semi-fictionalised story of an 11th century British saint called Godric of Finchale. It's told mainly in the first person as he looks back over his long life. Godric survives a near drowning when he's young, and his own life is a pretty complicated affair. Then, despite an early call to follow a life of godliness, he embarks upon a life of petty crime, selling counterfeit relics, a bit of buccaneering, and a time with his friend Roger Mouse on their boat, the Saint Esprit, scamming pilgrims and the like. But a dreamlike encounter with St Cuthbert when he goes to try and bury his ill-gotten gains on the Isle of Farne, and a recurring vision of a beautiful and wise spiritual figure called Gillian draw him into a life of devotion to God as he becomes a hermit at Finchale. Now, a monk called Reginald, a monk from Durham, is sent to write the story of Godric's life, and he finds that the aging hermit's life of miracles, wisdom and good deeds is woven through with the hard realities of thievery, deception, murder and incest. Now, it's a rollicking tale. In some ways a bit picaresque, but it's told with a ribaldry and an earthiness that reminded me of Chaucer and Rabelais. And the language is beautiful. Buechner himself has written that he saw writing it in the first person as posing a problem of developing a language that sounded authentic on Godric's lips without becoming impenetrably archaic. And it's a problem he clearly solved, because the writing comes over as almost poetic, with a rhythm and vividness that make you just want to keep on reading it, sometimes even aloud, to capture the full power of it. It's a great read. I did something I rarely do and read it through again as soon as I'd finished it the first time. And the themes of sin, regret, redemption and Christian spirituality are mixed together with a masterful grasp of the human condition and the power of the divine call. It is well worth reading.
Hello, my name's Sally Hayter and the book I've chosen is Barnaby Rudge. In recent times I've read a lot of contemporary fiction with varying degrees of satisfaction and uncertainty as to its long-term prospects of gaining a place in the canon of literature, so I've decided to revisit some of the classics. And I chose Barnaby Rudge because I think it's one of Dickens' lesser known novels and it deserves an airing. It's early Dickens and one of only 2 of his novels that could be called historical, the other being Tale of Two Cities. The historical aspect of the novel deals with the social and religious upheavals of the early 19th century which resulted in the Gordon riots. But Dickens is not a historian and he's only really interested in the history of his own century. So the historical storyline doesn't overwhelm the novel. The other thing to say about it being an early work is that here is a novelist who is in love with his craft. The style is exuberant and vibrant and his brain is teeming with ideas. It's full of energy and it's a rollicking good read. It's got tension, drama, melodrama, a touch of the Gothic. Occasionally it's sentimental but never mawkish like The Old Curiosity Shop, for example. It's got humour and some great comic creations which we would expect from Dickens. But the story is told with a lightness of touch. It's got a lot of tongue-in-cheek humour in the telling. There are plenty of twists and turns in the plot, a plot which contains murder, riot, arson, execution and love interest. But Dickens doesn't get tangled up in his plot like he does in some of his later fiction. It's a book of its time, so some of the language, and in particular the treatment of the character of Barnaby, may sit uncomfortably with our modern sensibilities, but it is essentially humane. It also airs some religious themes as well. There's issues surrounding remorse, guilt, judgment, which again may feel a bit troubling for some. It's also a very picturesque read. It's like a verbalisation of a Hogarth print. The visual images and descriptions are superb. For example, the Maypole Inn, where quite a bit of the action takes place, is as much a character in the story as its proprietor John Willits is. And the atmosphere that Dickens creates throughout the novel, but particularly in the build-up and description, for example, of the execution scene at the end of the novel, and that's giving nothing away about possible outcomes, is masterful, it's sublime. In conclusion, it's a big, baggy, pacey, funny, engaging, exciting read. I loved all 800 pages of it. So take it down. If you've got a battered, unread copy on your shelves, dust it off and enjoy, or you can buy a nice new copy from Vintage. After all, it was written for a leisured class, and currently leisure is something we have plenty of.